So the task one writing in Ielts for the academic paper, it is where the students are given, it could be a line graph, a bar chart, a couple of different graphs. It could be some maps, a couple of maps or plans, and it could be a process diagram. And the idea is that the student takes what is on the page and writes a summary or writes a report of essentially what is that picture, that graph trying to tell us. One thing that I would always tell teachers to do when they're preparing students for the class is make sure that they know exactly what they need to do for each one. Because writing for a line graph is often about describing trends, whereas if you look at two different plans and you have to describe the changes over time, it's a very different thing. So the students and the teachers need to know what to do to get the best score in each one. The general training, the candidate has to write a letter. And again, it's just about mainly knowing the conventions, teaching students in a general training scenario, how do we write a letter? What is the format? And what is the, for example, if I write, "Dear Sir" or "Madam," do I finish it "yours faithfully" or "yours sincerely"? It's always interesting how fixated students become over this idea of academic writing and is it academic enough? And the other one is it formal enough? It is kind of academic in tone, but academic writing is another thing altogether. There is a way of writing. For example, I mean, you wouldn't include contractions. It is what you would write rather than it's. But what I tend to find gets students more nervous than anything is trying to write in an overly formal, overly stylised academic way when they not necessarily that they've got the language to be able to do that at a higher level. So adopt a kind of a neutral, semi-formal tone for it. You're just writing a report. What I often say to students when I'm teaching for task one and they can't quite understand the nature of the task is that I say to them, okay, imagine that you work for somebody and your boss says, "I haven't got time to read that. Can you just write me a quick report and tell me what it means?" Because he's very busy. And in a way, that's kind of counterintuitive, because if he was very busy, he'd probably look at the line graph. But students tend to get that. They tend to get it if you can decontextualise it from "you're doing this for the exam." What does that graph? What is it trying to tell us? What is this piece of information trying to tell me? Give me the main points and give me the main overall idea. What can I extract from that? And within that, base your language as if you're writing for your boss or you're writing for your teacher. You don't necessarily have to try and impress somebody as if you're writing for a university professor. Just write a normal report summary on what you can see. Describes the wrong word. I mean, it is about really getting that picture that you see in front of you and thinking, what is this trying to tell me? And the other thing is, if you get too descriptive, then you're not going to get as much credit. Because if you write about every single, say you've got a line graph, if you write about the progression and the trends of every single thing, everything that happened in every year, every percentage, then the examiner is not going to give you a good mark. You're not going to get a good score for it. The best thing a teacher can do to get really good at teaching a task one is to practice themselves. Practice again and again. You can look in course books, you can look on the internet. There are thousands of different Ielts task one graphs and charts and everything. The teacher and the students have to just practice. What are the main features here? I don't want to know everything. So look for big trends, look for big differences, look for things that are similar, look for things that you can connect, look for things that don't change. Don't try and get every single change, every single point. This is about the main features. It says it in the question. You want the main features. And to help you do that, and something that is absolutely, absolutely vital, is to think about it in terms of getting a good overview. And in an IELTS Task 1, you have to include an overview. And that's basically like the main summary. No data, no figures or anything. It's just, this is what this graph is saying to us. So if you don't include an overview, you haven't done your job. That overview, that summary, is often a good place to start because you're looking at the bigger picture before going down to details. One approach is to take it into another context and say this is being written for your boss, as I said before, but that doesn't work for everybody. So it is, as much as you can try and take the student out of that exam room when you're preparing them, that's the best thing you can do, because there is such pressure and there's such panic that some students will get when they look at a task one, because they can just feel themselves and imagine themselves in that exam room and thinking, I've got to do this better than I could have ever done before. It does seem a bit strange to say in one way, don't just do practice papers, and then in the other way saying the way you get good at this is to do lots of them. But that's because it's very important in one of the there's only one of the categories that maybe a language teacher hasn't necessarily encountered in a language classroom before in Task 1 Ielts is task achievement, which is essentially how well have you answered the question, how well have you fulfilled the criteria that you need to fulfill. There's task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy. Language teachers are often fine with teaching grammar and teaching vocabulary. They're not necessarily going to know much about how to answer the IELTS question, so task achievement is another one. And coherence and cohesion is about how you make a piece of writing flow. It's about teaching discourse. So it's only 50% of the test that is really the traditional sort of language classroom approach. You have to know what you're doing in IELTS. You have to know what they're looking for. Doing just analysing how you're approaching it and doing lots of different graphs will help you get a better score in task achievement. It's practice. It's practice. It's not just doing a test again and again. You get better at something by practicing. In terms of getting that full knowledge of how to approach a Task 1 question, this is where mindset can really help at all the levels. There's a real sense of building in how to do the task. How do you fulfil that task achievement? How do you make sure you structure it? It's not just in the classroom. There are online modules for the students to go away and help. And as I say, if they practice how to approach the task, they can do that in their own time. They don't necessarily need a teacher to do that with them. They've got the online help as well. But there's enough support for the teachers in the books to enable them to kind of get to where they need to be pretty quickly, and that's understanding how to approach a Task 1 writing. One of the really helpful things about the book as a whole is that it is broken down into bespoke individual skills units, and each one of those units can be taken out and used as a standalone lesson if you want to. And within that standalone lesson, the task is broken down. It's not just giving a model answer and saying, have a go at that and see how you get on. It's saying, here's what you do for this. And it's not, the course isn't trying to do the same thing again and again. So one unit might talk about how to best answer a question in terms of what main features you're looking for. Another unit might look at how you construct an overview. So taken as a whole, it covers all the ground you need to. But taken individually, you can take this unit out and work on task achievement. You can work on your language to develop, talking about trends. Each unit tackles a part of what you're going to need to do. It doesn't try and drown the students with too much information. Bits, 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 and it scaffolds the learner all the way to where their understanding is fully developed.